to another episode of Consciousness Rising Zimbabwe and beyond. And this is a place where you can find people coming from all walks of life who are making a difference to their community and therefore we think to the world. We have the healers, we have people working in the metaphysical. The other day we had the urban farmers. So it's a variety of topics that we are bringing to you so that we know what's going on in the world from a different perspective. So today I'm so happy to have with me Marietta van der Werff. And she's a personal friend, but most of all today she's here to talk about astrology. So Marietta's life is very varied, maybe we can say, it's very different. So she was born in Mozambique, in Beira. And then she grew up, then she went back to Holland, she's from Holland. And she went back there when she was very young, so she did their schooling there up to university level. So she became an agronomist, specialized in plant breeding, which is actually a main business because you are into seed production.
Yes.
And then she's always been a seeker. She's always been seeking for more. She knew that there was more in this world than what met the eyes, and this is the way we met. The two of us. So, Marietta, tell us briefly about your life and how you ended up to astrology.
Yeah, it's been an interesting path indeed. So, from Holland, after I finished my studies in plant breeding, indeed, I actually wanted to come back to Africa, but it wasn't easy to find a job in my line of specialty. And so I ended up in the Philippines, actually, so quite in a different area of the world, and spent 11 years working in vegetable plant breeding and vegetable seed business. And in hindsight, while I don't think I would have consciously chosen that, it was a step in my life that really prepared me for coming back to Africa. And I did so in 2001. It was not a very direct path that led me back to Africa, but I knew at some stage that this is where I needed to be. And so I came to Zimbabwe and ended up having my own seed business here in Zimbabwe. But I've always had a wide interest, and a deep love for nature, especially. I'm always out in nature, always connecting to nature. And so in the Philippines, the way I did that was majorly through scuba diving. So I explored the undersea world. And here in Africa, in Zimbabwe, without an ocean anywhere close by, the nature path led me into the bush, and so the wild nature of Africa. And I ended up, developing a deep love and a deep connection, especially with elephants, but actually with all of nature. It's just incredible. And from there, to cut a very long story short, but I ended up in touch with the Global White Lion Protection Trust in South Africa, and I created a deep connection with the white lions in South Africa, and that is ultimately also how I ended up with astrology, because I was on a most amazing journey connecting to the black, they call them the black lions of the Kalahari, and the white lions of Timbavati. This was with Linda Tucker of the White Lions, and also with Maurice Fernandez. And Maurice Fernandez is a worldwide known astrologer, and he brought in the astrology into this particular journey, and it totally captivated me. And it was not long after that journey that I ended up studying astrology, and I found great recognition in the astrology itself, and I continued that, and I'm now practicing that.
You're doing astrology, but it's not the usual astrology, which is in the column of the newspaper, you're doing evolutionary astrology,
Yes.
which is a completely different branch. So start to tell us a bit more. What are the differences?
Yes, I think, astrology as it is still known by most people is a bit of a laughable thing, which we call the sun sign astrology, that you find in the columns of the papers, and, it's all a very shallow kind of astrology. It's a little bit of a caricature, I would say, of the real astrology. Okay. Because if we talk real astrology, it is a science. It really is a science. It's a science that is the oldest science in the world. And so if we look back to ancient times, ancient cultures, astrology was always practiced. But the science of astrology, the knowledge of astrology, was condemned ultimately by many religions in the world, especially the Christian religion, and so it was shoved to the back, and it was actually demonized. So there's still people that believe that practicing astrology is wrong and it is sinful. But if we really look at the depths of astrology, it was the science, if we could even think of a story that everybody knows, and that's that the three wise men followed the stars to find the birth of Christ. And so that is it, the stars have got so much knowledge, and for people who understand the language of the stars, there's deep guidance and deep understanding of many things in life, and in fact guidance to all of our lives, all aspects of our lives. So there are many how would you call it, many channels of astrology, and the one that I study and practice is evolutionary astrology. It's one of the more modern versions of astrology, if you want to see it that way, because astrology is also evolving. It's not a fixed science. Of course, there's basic knowledge that we learn, and it has been revealed by many people practicing astrology, many wisdom keepers, and astrology is constantly evolving. So we discover new planets, and we discover new information about their cycles and how they interact, and all of that. So it's an ongoing science of evolution.
So let me understand something. When we talk about astrology, it's like the way the planets, in my understanding from talking to you, the way the planets are at a certain point in the sky, on their orbits, they reflect, each planet has got an energy, and they reflect those energies on planet Earth, correct?
In a way, yes, that is correct. So astrology really looks at the planets in our solar system. So we all know that, all the planets in our solar system rotate around the sun. Yeah. But astrology, the way we practice it, we actually look at how do they look from the planet Earth. We are on planet Earth ourselves.
Oh, okay.
So we actually in astrology, we talk about the sun rotating around the Earth, which is not true, of course, but we look at the movement, the cycles of the sun around the Earth. And so the same with the moon, because from our perspective on Earth, that is how we see it. So
I'm just lost imagining all the planets. Okay, yes. So we become the sun. I didn't know that.
Yeah, okay. So in astrology, we are the center of the universe.
Okay, that tells you something.
It definitely tells you something, absolutely. And so we look at the planets in the solar system, and now you can imagine that, when we cast a chart, because astrology is all about birth charts of certain moments, and then what we call the transits, so the ongoing revolutions of the planets. So a chart, and therefore astrology, is actually a science of time and space, because when we are born, the planets are in a certain position relative to the Earth. And the moment of your birth is almost like a snapshot of the planets where they are at that particular time, and not just at that particular time, but seen from the place where you were born. So people can be born on exactly the same moment, but one would be born, let's say, in Europe, another born in southern tip of Africa or wherever, and we would see different things in the chart.
And that's our blueprint. This snapshot that you're talking about becomes kind of our blueprint that gives us what?
Guidance. I would say guidance. So what is a chart? So first of all, it's a snapshot of time and space at the time of your birth. And what is very important to understand is that in astrology, it's not the same as fate. So while everybody has got their unique chart, a unique alignment of planets in your birth chart, it really tells you a lot of things. There's so many layers to a chart. So in a chart, you can see the story of somebody's past lives, for example, so the evolution of their soul. It tells you about what are the tools that are given to you in this particular lifetime. And when you understand that and you get the insight into how this works, you also understand that you can give shape to your life by using those particular tools. However, while it might be seen in your chart that you have got, let's say, a very outgoing character, very creative, very artistic, or more introverted and more quiet. Maybe you're more of a communicator instead of a business person, let's say, for example. So those characteristics can be seen in your chart. However, the way you express it, the way you make use of those tools, ultimately is up to you. And so therefore it is a matter of free choice. So while your birth chart, while astrology can sketch the energies, it can sketch the possibilities, the potentials, but how it's going to work out in your life, that is up to you.
I mean, I know that when I came for you for a reading and you gave me that example that there was a grand cross, because I always feel very separated, too many interests pulling me apart, and then you looked at my natal chart and said, oh, that's why. Okay, so then I can relax. I mean, it just came this way. and it's funny because after I had that conversation with you and you did that reading, for me, actually, my life changed because I said there is no point to fight.
Exactly.
That's like the way it was designed at that time. But then how do I react with it? How do I
live with that?
How do I live with that? And funny enough, that was what, a year ago maybe?
Yes.
Yes, my life is integrating now.
And that's so beautiful.
Yeah.
That's so beautiful. And that, I think, thanks for bringing it up that way, because I think that very briefly actually sketches the power of astrology. So astrology is the language of the stars, and if we understand, our birth chart and how the stars give us those possibilities, if we understand that, if we really in depth understand that, then there is so much clarity and there is so much understanding and so much. And then while we also understand that life is not a blueprint in the sense that you just have to go through the motions and things will happen all by themselves, but that you are given the choice. And so in your case, you understood that you have the potential of developing in so many different directions. And instead of seeing it as a difficulty and as a challenge and how do I bring this together, you now have come to the understanding that, well, I can utilize all these different talents, if you want to see it, all these different possibilities. I can tap into that, and I can express that beautifully in a holistic way.
Yeah, it's becoming like a juggler. I mean, but instead of being affected like it was before, I'm proactive.
Right.
I say, okay, where can we go? Which direction this time?
Exactly.
And it became much simpler, really much simpler for me.
And that's one of the gifts of astrology, which is really beautiful.
The language of the stars sounds so poetic. It is poetic.
Yes.
It really is poetic. So stars, 2020. Ah,
Yeah.
2020. Well, it's been on for the past, 2 years already, the preparation for this 2020. I mean, in many different disciplines, in shamanism, in astrology, in all the circles, they've been saying 2020 is the year of ascension, the 2020 is the year of deep change, but I don't think that anyone had foreseen the way it came with this pandemic
Absolutely.
and lockdown and 5G and oh my God, these 6 months already have just flew.
Yeah.
I mean, they've just flown away. I don't know where it's gone. So
What to say about 2020? Yes.
Yeah.
Well, astrologers around the world saw this coming. Maybe not in the detail of the pandemic and the lockdowns and economic collapse and all that kind of stuff, but what astrologers did see coming was that the beginning of 2020 was going to be a massive alignment of certain planets in our solar system that are very unique, very powerful, and in the specific alignment that they were going to have, we could see immense challenges, immense changes, and so astrologers already for many years before the start of 2020 were saying 2020 is going to be a watershed year in which we will look back years later and say, wow, there was life before 2020 and there's life after 2020, and the two are not the same. And so, I don't want to go into much technical detail here because I don't think for our audience that would be the most interesting thing. But let's put it this way, that the way astrologers looked at the year 2020 was with the understanding that all the structures of our lives were going to be redefined. So when we talk about structure of life, it really is everything that defines our life. So that's on a personal as well as on a global level. So structures, what do we talk about structures? It's about our governments, about about laws and rules and regulations, and how do we define the framework of our lives. We also talk about monetary systems, another thing which is really in big collapse. And so we knew that power, the distribution of power, how we govern, how we allow ourselves to be governed, all of this is under scrutiny and shake-up, big shake-up, so that we're saying like the foundations of our lives, of everything that we have defined as human life, are going to crumble and fall apart. But also knowing that falling apart and that crumbling and the redefinition is not a purpose in itself. What is actually happening here is that we are getting to understand, we're wakening up to the knowledge that we are limiting ourselves big time, and that the structures that we have always bought into and that we have set in place, governments, laws, regulations, systems, beliefs, are no longer serve us. We need to evolve as human beings. We need to evolve. We need to come to new understandings of higher equality, of better relationship with nature, with understanding of who we are and what our own power is. And so that's the awakening that is happening, and it's happening with big drama. So the pandemic, while the pandemic itself was not foreseen, at least not by many people, but look what it has done, all in all. We have, we've all experienced lockdown, we've all experienced limitations in our lives, how we are able to express ourselves. Travel has been limited. Our governments are under major pressure.
I mean, personal liberties have really...
Freedoms have been taken away from us.
Yes.
And we're still in the middle of all of this, we're not at the end.
On top of that, the government, in the name of protecting ourselves, have created this starvation situation, not only in Zimbabwe. I mean, I know that in Italy there is many businesses that have closed.
Yes.
So there's really a lot that has been shaken really the ground big time.
And so the pandemic is just one external way in which it is expressing, and it's but what is it doing? Look at your own life and see, like, what is this lockdown and what are all these restrictions and these freedoms taken away from me? What are they doing to me in my personal life? And I think a lot of people will understand or will see that their personal foundations are shaking in their lives. We've had so many people, lose their jobs or become sick or, being separated from their families and not being able to reunite. Everything that we have taken for granted that we believe is, we thought we're going to continue to live our way in the way we used to. We knew it and we could live that way for forever. And suddenly everything's changed. And there's a lot of uncertainty, and I think a lot of people have gone into fear around this. Like, they can't imagine, we still can't imagine, like, how could life be different after this? But it is the greatest invitation when our foundations are cracking up, when the walls are coming down, when the roof is tumbling on us. We know that we need to build a new house, and we need to find a safer place.
We are at a new dawn.
Yes.
Except that we can't see past.
Yes.
Yet.
Yes. We're still in the shaking up phase, and while we all speak about, yes, this is the dawning of a new age, and we are going to go into a golden age. We are going to go into, a much deeper, loving and more holistic and all-encompassing community-based and definitely and with much healthier relationship to nature. We all know that is the invitation, and we are going to go there, but the way to get there is not very clear just yet. And I feel that the whole year 2020 is an ongoing path of deepening into this, and only once all the obscuring structures are being taken down, only then can we really forge a way forward. So I think the year 2020 is an invitation to really look very deeply into and start very close to home, start with ourselves, and to realize, like, okay, what is working in my life? What is something that, if I had the total freedom of going forward in the way that I wanted to, what would I like to take with me? And what is limiting? And what is unhealthy? Literally unhealthy. So this pandemic is confronting us with dis-ease, with what is not working, with what is unhealthy in our system.
And this is just a metaphor of what's not working. This is what's not at ease.
Yes.
Does it go with the flow or we go against the flow?
Yes.
So that's always a question to ask ourselves all the time.
Yes.
How does it really feel? I mean, lots of relationships have completely exploded or imploded in these times.
Yeah.
So the first half of the year is gone.
Yes.
So
what's next?
What's next for the second part of the year? I know that there is a certain Mars that just came into play tonight.
Yes, last night.
Last night.
Yes, so we're into a whole new chapter in that sense. the next chapter of destruction, if we want to put it
Yay!
that way.
We're waiting for that.
Yeah. Well, we actually as we're speaking now, we're in a very, very powerful period of time. We're still in the middle of what we would call eclipse window. So eclipses, just to say a very quick word about eclipses. Eclipses are that time of the year when we have a direct alignment between the Earth, from which we observe and which is the center point of our understanding, and the Sun and the Moon. So yes. Sun and Moon are the 2 points of light in our solar system. Yes. So the Sun during the day, the Moon during the night, these are the lights that shine over our lives and give us guidance. Through the Moon and the Sun we can see, literally see, so with our eyes, but it's also the seeing of the direction and the enlightening elements of our lives. So when we get an eclipse, the lights of the day or the lights of the night are suddenly literally eclipsed. They are blocked out. And so for a short period of time, the light by which we navigate is no longer there, and we're in the dark. And that means that suddenly other forces are at work, and we can be subject to, I would call it divine intervention, when the rules that we know kind of no longer work, and there can be something new, something different, something totally unexpected can come shining through. And so that happens like twice a year, that we have these movements of star and moon and earth, and these lights get eclipsed. And so the start of 2020, going back there, was a powerful, powerful eclipse in the early part of January. The first one actually came in December, then in January we had another eclipse. And that eclipse, look what it brought into motion, and what it brought into being. Our whole world has changed since that eclipse. So now it's June, and we're in a second series of eclipses.
Three of
yes,
them.
we're 3 in a row.
The eclipses are twice a year generally.
Normally they happen twice a year. You could say twice a year. Yeah. And then normally there is 2 eclipses in a row, like a solar eclipse and a lunar eclipse. But this particular time of June, July, we've got 3. So we've just gone initially.
Because 2 were not enough.
Not enough, no. We need to shake things up a little bit more. Okay. So we've just again gone through a really powerful eclipse that was 7 days ago on the solstice. Yes. And that was a solar eclipse, not visible here in Zimbabwe, not quite, other places in the world, but eclipses don't really matter in that sense. They're global, they affect everybody. So that was a very powerful eclipse that we've just gone through. And we're now waiting for the last eclipse of this window, or of this series, to come through. And that will be on the 5th of July.
Yes.
Eclipses don't, while the moment of an eclipse is a sacred moment in itself, it's such a powerful moment. It is a moment in which the realms open up, and we can have these divine intervention happening. But many times, we won't particularly notice anything happening at that moment, but eclipses tend to have an effect over time. So in the days, weeks, months after eclipses, the effect of the eclipse can be felt, both on a global level as well as on a personal level. So we're now in the next wave, if you want to see it that way. And not only are we having these eclipses happening to us, but we've also got a very amazing alignment of the planet Mars.
Yes, okay, we have
visitors on our side. But
visitors.
She's important, and I'll speak about that in a moment, because we're going to talk about the dog star just now. Yeah. So going back to the eclipses, so they can have an effect in the time past, after months after the eclipse actually happens. And then, okay, so we are now also, just yesterday, the planet Mars moved into its home sign of Aries. And that happens every 2 years. You know, it's a normal cycle of Mars. It takes about 2 years to travel around the sun. So it will come into its own sign of Aries every second year. But this year, again, it's 2020, you know, unusual things happen. And so we have the transit, what we call the transit, the passage of Mars through the sign of Aries is going to take 6 months instead of 6 weeks this time around.
And what's the energy of Mars? Because probably people don't know much about
Right,
Mars.
so we need to talk about that. So Mars is a very active energy. It can take, you know, any planet, any sign, any planet can be expressed at many different levels. So it's not linear, it's not one-sided, but Mars can be so many things. Mars is new things, you know. Mars is creation, Mars is passion, Mars is drive, it's creative energy. Mars wants to move forward, you know. Mars is the birthing of something, and yet Aries is also can be a very because it's so fiery, you know, and see it as a fiery sign. It is it can also carry a lot of anger. It can carry the element or the feeling of separation, because through Mars and through Aries we kind of step up on our own, you know, as individuals, and we count as individuals. So you can just imagine, if you take all that together, that Mars is an invitation to get things done and to speak out and to be creative and start something new. So when this happens in a time as in 2020, when we've got already so many things going on, you know, people's freedoms are taken away, people are on edge, they are they're feeling something new, but at the same time something is crumbling, and you know, and there's uncertainty and there's fear. So you can imagine that Mars in Aries in these kind of conditions can be very volatile, can be very, very fiery. It can spark up, and it can bring anger, and it can bring
all the riots in the States. Here we don't know what's going to happen with this eco cache that has been removed.
But I think my personal take is, and because we're now going into a 6-month, you know, experience of this Mars in Aries, Mars is going to move forward, and then it's going to go retrograde, and it's going to come back all the way. So we're going to reevaluate, like, you know, okay, so how are we want to recreate this? What do we want to bring in new? How are we going to react? Retrograde act. Mars, how are we going to react to everything that is going to come our way?
So it's a time for reflection.
Well, it's time for reflection, but because Mars is action, it's not just sitting and thinking, you know, it's not retreating into a cave and saying like, okay, I'm going to spend this time and I'm going to figure things out. No, Mars wants things done. So we can expect, my personal take is, like, you know, we've seen so many of our freedoms being taken away, you know, worldwide, through all the laws that are put in place, and police and army that is out there, and you know, and there is so much confusion about who do we see as an authority in our lives. And I think this particular period of time that we're going to go into is going to spark in us individually and collectively a need to stand up and to say no more to all this. You can't push me. I'm not a sheep. I'm not going to be pushed into that corner. I don't want to abide anymore by the ways that the government or that, you know, the authorities that we have in our lives dictate the way we are supposed to be. I am sovereign. I'm an individual. I choose for myself. So I think we're going to really get empowered in the way that we choose. And it's going to be an evolution. It's going to be a learning curve. Things are going to dawn on us because we're going to be confronted with, oh no, not like that. No, I do not. Just saying something. Let's say we see a great movement of forced vaccines. You know, it's like you can't travel out of the country unless you show your vaccine passport, for example. So people will, it's like, is that really the way that I want to live? Some people will say, yeah, that's the way to do it, because that's the only way to be safe. And then there's going to be groups of people that are going to say, never, I'm not going to abide with that. And so you can already see that there's going to be more of those clashes of opinion and of where do we go with this? Am I going to follow what the authorities are wanting of me, or am I going to say, like, no, that restricts me too much, and I'm going to say no. So that is just one way in this, the way this Mars in Aries could work out in the coming times. But yeah, we'll all be confronted with that.
So time to really ask ourselves deep questions.
Very deep questions. Is where, okay, knowing where we're coming from, our lives have been shaken up, the foundations are tearing apart, which is scary on the one hand side, because everything we've taken for granted is just crumbling. Yes. But it also opens great opportunities, because if not this way, then what way? So can you see the potential for creation?
Going back to the drawing board.
Back to the drawing board and make choices and make decisions and come up creatively in your own way. So, and it could be experienced as difficult, because, you know, we've always been fed that, let's say, that belief that we are smaller than what we actually are. So the time coming is the time that we can step up into our real purpose, step up into our real calling, step up into an understanding of what can we really be and what can we really do with our lives. And astrology offers massive insights. You know, it can offer us that understanding. It's like, where is my strength as a person? What am I coming here to do on this earth? What is my soul's purpose? Why am I alive at this particular crossroads in time? Why and what and how can I do that?
Fascinating. Totally fascinating. And so you were saying before when we were chatting that there is lots of Sirian energy coming through.
Yes.
What?
How and what? Yes. So we go back to the eclipse. In fact, the eclipse of the 5th of July. So that's the last one in the series of 3 that we are right in the middle of now. And that particular eclipse is aligned with Sirius, with the planet Sirius.
Oh, okay.
And which is beautiful, and that's why I love the dog, you know, come walking in and come say, like, well, here I am. And because Sirius is also known as the dog star, you know, and well, Sirius, so when we have an eclipse aligned with Sirius, my understanding of that is that will be a time, that will be a portal that we can remember I said, like, there's divine intervention. So I can see that. The way I interpret it is that this is a time that we can really be open to Sirian energies coming in, because the eclipse is aligned with the sun, the moon, the earth, Sirius. Not necessarily in that order, by the way, but you see what I'm saying. So they're all perfectly aligned. And so what is the Sirian energy then? What is Sirius doing this whole thing? So the Sirian energy to me is, I see the planet Sirius as being very, very strongly connected to the origin of life on Earth. Oof. And this goes back into deep mythology, deep ancient knowledge that is available if we open up to listening to the ancient records and ancient peoples. And so the mythology goes that the beings, the Sirian beings, enlightened beings from Sirius, actually came to Earth to seed. Here's the word seed again, you know, to seed life on Earth. And through that seeding, through that genetic coding, you know, to bring in the human race, which had a beautiful, let's say, purpose to it. So human beings on the planet Earth were here have been seeded here to learn about their divine being, their divinity. And so through life on earth, you know, the evolution of people, we are starting to remember who we really are and what our purpose on this earth is, to come back into our divine spark and our divine being. And so Sirius, there are Syrian beings on this earth, incarnated on this earth, in our animals, the dogs, but also, you know, in the lions and the dolphins and in so many other forms of life. And humans carry Syrian energy, or can at least be open to receive Syrian energy. And so the wisdom of the origin of life comes through the Syrian connection. So if we then go back to this eclipse happening soon, where we have that alignment with Sirius, it basically is, it's like a portal opening where we can come back to that remembrance and come back to that understanding of the origin of life. So how do we bring the divine spark, you know, back into this world that has gone so berserk, you know, and has gone so off the rails, if we want to see it that way? How can we realign with that particular energy?
So ready to receive to see it again, the origin of life.
Yes.
I mean, to bring back
the
what
origin.
we have forgotten.
We have forgotten. It's been veiled for us, you know, and we've gone off on a tangent, and thought that was what it was all about. That was what life was all about. And now we're coming to this dead end road. We all know that life cannot continue the way we had been living our lives. You know, so centered on the human and our needs and wants and our greeds and our powers and all of that, and we've forgotten about how life is intertwined with so much more. And so this is a time that we can realign with that. And it's not that we're going back in time. Remember, evolution is about always going forward, and it's always about, you know, sort of adding in and becoming wiser and bigger and expanding and becoming more beautiful. So what we are doing is like, okay, we've had this experience as human beings. We know that this is not a road we can continue on. So we're now invited, okay, let's take on a new road. How do we bring in that seed of life again? How do we now bring everything up to a higher frequency and up to a even more divine expression of what we can be as human beings?
Ooh, lots of, I don't know how to say, if it's lots of work to do, or maybe it's more to listen and just let it happen by itself.
Yes, I think
being
listening
open,
is
put the intent that, okay, that's the direction we want to go.
Yes.
And,
I think listening is a very good word, because I think as humanity we have forgotten how to listen. And we know we speak a lot, and we put our energy out there and we dominate and we create. And listening is, and I think, you know, what works for me beautifully is go into nature and listen to nature. Because from a human being, you know, our voices are too loud.
Yes.
And through the human voices, we don't really get it. So go, and it can be as simple as just going out into your garden and just sitting under a tree and just watching the clouds go by, listen to the birds, you know, or sit with your dog and have a little, you know, have a cozy time with your dog for a little bit. Or any which way.
So thank you for this suggestion, which keeps coming up from many different people, because it's one that is so simple and yet so fundamental and
so
profound.
Yeah.
And I'm so happy of all the things that you have shared about the Syrian energy and the new portals opening, because on Friday here we have our portal into the Heart Star, and it's going to be an exhibition that next Friday myself and Dodd are going to have with mandala paintings and jewelry. And so you can always contact to know where it's going to be. And it's going to be a delightful weekend next time. So Marietta, anything to add before we close? Any more wisdom? We had lots of wisdom from you today. We thank you so much for that.
Oh, it's most welcome. I think maybe to spend a few words on the journeys into nature that we actually do together.
Yes.
Because that is
going to be all another talk, but you can anticipate.
Yes. So one of the things I love to do, we've spoken about the connection with nature, and that's an integral part of my own life. I couldn't live without a deep connection with nature. But over the years, and we're going to do this more into the future, I hope, as things open up, I myself, and together with Antonella here, we actually organize sacred journeys into nature. And one particular focal point we love to bring in is to work with the elephants, which is, again, it's a different tangent, it's a different angle to it, but it's not separated. It's not something different from the work that I've spoken of through astrology, because the elephants in this particular case, or be it the white lions or any other animal, any other nature being. But in this particular case, the elephants can bring us in deep, deep connection and reverence with the earth. The elephants are beautiful beings carrying the divine feminine energy, the nurturing and the matriarchal leadership, if you want to see it that way, the deep ancient knowledge, that comes through their memories. Yes. And so connecting with elephants, deeply persecuted on this earth, but if you're able to connect with them on that particular level, it is so enriching, and it is life-changing. I think a lot of people have experienced as life-changing.
It is life-changing,
because your whole rooting into the earth, your whole connection with Mother Gaia changes completely. If you can really listen, and if you can really tap into those kind of connections. And I think we can both say that the elephants are the most amazing, generous teachers that you can think of. What is your experience?
My experience is for another talk.
Okay,
I won't tell you now. I want you back with another talk on that.
Yeah,
so,
wonderful.
Marietta,
awesome.
Thank you so much again. Once again, thank you so much. And if you would like to have a reading with Marietta, what would you're on Facebook?
I'm on Facebook. You can find me on Facebook. You can WhatsApp me. You can email me.
We'll put the contact in the description below, so you can contact her directly, or you can pass through us. It's the same, and just have a reading done. I mean, it's really it's really an experience that may put lots of things in place. Makes so much sense to have it. Thank you for your wisdom.
Thank you for having me today, and thank you for letting me talk on astrology, which is a topic very close to my heart. And
I know. I followed you, and I've seen how it's grown.
And there's much more to come. I'm sure. Yeah, evolution.
Blessings. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Antonella, and thank you, everybody, for listening.
Thank you.